Adultery. Paranoia. Close family. What was it like in the early 1800s, being married to one of the most famous poets ever known? She went by many names, but the woman born Anne Isabella Milbanke would go on to be known as Lady Byron. How did this come to pass? And how did it end? How could a deeply religious Baroness Wentworth become embroiled in depravity? Born on May 17, 1792, she was an only child to politician Sir Ralph Milbanke, 6th Baronet, and the Honourable Judith Noel, his wife. This gave her the title of Baroness Wentworth, although she never used it, preferring her entourage to call her Annabella. Her youth was what one would expect from someone with such a privileged background.
She was very smart, very gifted, able to focus on her schooling. It got her into Cambridge, where she took classical lit, science, but she had a special knack for mathematics. We even see her daughter eventually follow a similar path.
It was around this time, in 1812, at the age of 20, that Annabella would come to meet the man she would end up falling for.
George Gordon Byron. We know him as Lord Byron. Was a poet, and his popularity was only rising. He'd met Annabella at many social get-togethers, and there was some mutual attraction. He was 24 at the time, just hitting his stride, so they say. There was just one problem. Lord Byron was already having an affair with her cousin's wife, Caroline Lamb.
Lady Caroline Lamb. She was already married to William Lamb, Annabella's cousin, yet she displayed a striking obsession with Lord Byron. Like any good affair, they had to pretend to squabble, or express their disapproval publicly. But behind the scenes, after Lord Byron broke off their relationship, the bemused Caro, which was his name for her, began acting irrationally, attempting to publicly slit her own wrists. The later part of her life saw her write to Byron constantly, and her works would frequently reference the poet. Eventually, her need for her lost love shifted to a need for alcohol and laudanum. In 1828, Lady Caroline Lamb died at the age of just 42, from complications from edema. Was Annabella soon to follow?
Don't forget, Annabella was deeply religious, and saw Lord Byron's rock star poet's lifestyle as somewhat of a challenge to overcome. She would justify this by calling him a very bad, very good man, and thinking it was her Christian obligation to help him.
Lord Byron did propose in 1812, but was rejected. This didn't stop the fire within them though. She first wrote to him in 1813, and they continued correspondence for the year before Annabella's father invited Byron to the family residence here, at Seaham Hall. After proposing a second time, Annabella and Lord Byron were married here privately, on January 2, 1815. They moved to Piccadilly Terrace to live together. Little did they know, this would be the start of their problems.
Lord Byron was a poet, not exactly a good businessman. Nor did he want to be. Chasing money was viewed as unbecoming. He made quite a few, shall we say, unwise financial decisions, and he ended up in debt. All this despite owning multiple estates.
By 1815, Lord Byron was profoundly stressed, and he would begin taking it out on Annabella. He began drinking more, and became unfaithful. While pregnant with their first and only child, Anne sought help from Lord Byron's half-sister, Augusta Lee. In 1816, after the birth of Ada, Byron had Anna and their daughter move here, to Kirby Mallory with her parents, just until he could deal with his financial crisis. Augusta Leigh stayed. This convinced the uneasy wife that the poet must certainly have gone mad, or at the least had some kind of malady. She began taking notes on his mannerisms and came to the conclusion Lord Byron could be suffering from hydrocephalus, a disease of the brain.
Hydrocephalus. It's an affliction that's colloquially called water on the brain. We know it's in fact cerebrospinal fluid that collects inside. This can cause a number of problems. Headaches, poor balance, and yes, even mental changes. Kinda messed up stuff if you ask me.
Lord Byron was never formally diagnosed. But his behavior was still erratic and unsafe, regardless of cause. After a brief counsel with one of Byron's friends, a John Hanson, Lady Byron took up her husband's offer and left, taking Ada with her, hoping her love would deal with his cognitive and monetary dilemmas. It was the last time they would see one another alive.
Annabella did love her husband, in her own way. She did what she could for him while they lived together, but couldn't save him in the end. She feared he might take his own life with her not by his side, yet he sent her off. What else was she to do?
Lord Byron's mind continued to go, and it prompted Anne's parents to push for a separation in their daughter's marriage. The first letter failed to reach Lord Byron's eyes, as Augusta Leigh, still living with her half-brother, hid the letter from him. Soon after, though, he did receive another letter, but he declined the divorce. Then, he received a letter that raised his eyebrows. The note was from Lady Byron, and stated she knew Lord Byron had a sexual relationship with his sister, with whom he'd lived.
There were rumors, which came out later, that Augusta Leigh's daughter was Lord Byron's too. But her husband just looked the other way. I mean, it might all be legitimate. But Byron went to see his sister a few days after the birth of the child in 1814. Later, he wrote to his friend about it, saying, "Oh, but it is worthwhile. I can't tell you why. And it is not an ape." He seemed pleased and a bit in shock the child wasn't deformed.
The letter also accused Byron of committing sodomy on Annabella, an illegal act. In perhaps a silent acknowledgement of the accusations, the message convinced Byron to finally agree to end their marriage. In March 1816, the divorce was finalized, in private. The drama surrounding his mental health, affairs, and divorce, in addition to his never-ending financial complications, caused Byron to leave England just 1 month later. He would never return.
Lord Byron had a fairly interesting life after leaving England, having a blank slate if you will. He would get involved with the Shelleys out in Switzerland, playing a part in the creation of Mary's famous Frankenstein story, had more adventures in Italy, and became somewhat of a hero while in Greece. Of course, there were always more affairs with married women sprinkled about.
Lord Byron died in Greece in 1824, after developing sepsis and a nasty fever, while attempting to lead a rebel army against the Ottomans. He was aged 36. Back in England, Annabella never remarried, perhaps due to her religious nature, or perhaps because she never got over Lord Byron. She dedicated the rest of her long life to social reform, such as improving the prison systems, founding a school, and being one of the only women to attend the Anti-Slavery Convention in 1840. Her daughter, Ada, who was also Lord Byron's only legitimate child, had a fulfilling, although somewhat short, life of her own. Using Charles Babbage's analytical machine, she is said to have completed the first computer program ever. Back in 1843. Unfortunately, her mother Annabella lost yet another loved one. Her daughter. When Ada passed away in 1852 from cancer, at the age of 36. The same age Lord Byron had died. She requested to be buried here, at the Church of St. Mary Magdalene, in Nottinghamshire, next to her father. Lady Byron herself eventually developed breast cancer and died 8 years later, aged 67. Though his seeming opposite in every way, Lady Byron took a chance with her poet love. No one can say the relationship shouldn't have happened, because no one can say she didn't love him. It was tumultuous and embarrassing at times. But at her death, Annabella truly felt she saved Lord Byron's soul. And that was good enough.